All right, panelists, let's do this. Sanda, let's start with you. For those unfamiliar with your organization, can you very briefly describe what the UN Global Compact is and how it works? And then my question for you is this. We've seen many companies step up and pledge to meet ambitious net zero emissions goals. How has the UN Global Compact been partnering with business to help speed along climate action and get big results?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, and greetings to you all, my fellow panelists and the audience who are here. So let me talk a little bit about the UN Global Compact, and I'll go to your question. So the Global Compact is a special initiative of the United Nations that was set up in the year 2000, and primarily with a mandate really at looking at how we can enhance and scale up what we call responsible and sustainable business practices. We hinge our work on what we call the 10 principles, that are 10 principles for responsible business that focus on the climate, the environment, labor rights, human rights, and anti-corruption. We also mobilize business to contribute towards the Sustainable Development Goals, a set of aspirational goals communicated by the UN in the year 2015. To date, we have 13,000 business participants who are members of the Global Compact, and 3,000 non-business participants, and we're present in 160 countries around the world. So ours is to raise the ambition on what responsible and sustainable business looks like. To your question, though, which is very much in line with that raising ambition, you mentioned that indeed we have seen lots of companies pledge to meet these ambitious goals, but what do we actually do to help speed up action? And I just want to start off by saying that it is really imperative that we move beyond commitment and ambition to real action. The climate crisis is real. I believe that we cannot simply afford to hit pause on tackling this climate emergency because it's very important. The statistics are stark. Global temperatures already up to 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And estimates are that it could rise by more than 3% unless we do something to really mitigate against the runway on which we are. So our starting premise is that business as usual is not an option, because business is a key contributor to the rise in temperatures and a lot of the emissions that we do see. So what do we do? I think at the Global Compact, ours is to really offer practical guidance in terms of how businesses can bridge that gap between ambition and action. We've always called for, especially in this COVID era, the opportunity to pause, reflect, and drive forward a green recovery. As we talk about building forward better, the opportunity now lies to look at what we need to do to either mitigate the path that we're on or adapt the path that we're on. I just want to cite two examples of some very practical work that we've done. Actually, the opening video spoke to one, which is really mobilizing around the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. We launched a year ago a campaign that we call Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees, giving an urgent call to businesses to limit warming or the rise of temperatures to 1.5 degrees by making the right strategic business decisions around their emissions. Since we launched, we have 600 companies with a market cap of more than $13 trillion that have answered our call and joined. So 600 companies making and taking action to limit their emissions trajectories. We have about 90 visionary business leaders from here in the US and 60 companies from, for example, the tech sector globally who have made these commitments as well. And they're really just showing that this level of compliance is possible with the right long-term shifts in how businesses can be run. I just want to cite another piece of research that we just released in advance of the recently held G7 summit a few weeks ago, which really did an analysis of G7 government commitments vis-a-vis how stock indices in these countries are performing. Because we all heard global leaders make these commitments around limiting to 1.5 degrees and net zero by 2050. But if we look at the capitalization on the stock indices, we found that those companies are actually very far off from this desired 1.5 degree trajectory. So again, we want to work with businesses to make sure that they can make those shifts to be able to get there. We provide practical tools, resources, technical support, leadership ambition, and goal setting around some of these practical instances.
Wow, truly impressive, the scope and the level of engagement that your organization and the leadership, it's amazing. Let's turn over to some of our other panelists. Tom, let's move on to you now. And as we did with Sanda, for those unfamiliar with your company, SunPower, can you also briefly describe what SunPower is and what it does? And then my question for you is this. We're looking ahead to the future, a low carbon economy. Can you share your vision of what the future will look like in, say, 30 years, if we're going to meet the president's goal of a net zero economy? When everything needs to be powered by clean energy, how will, for example, solar energy and storage solutions transform communities and form the building blocks of a resilient and sustainable economy that serves everyone?
Thanks, Mike, and awesome to be here. I really appreciate being included in the panel. And it's great to be with Silicon Valley Leadership Group, because SVLG is all about taking action and what can you do? And that's what I'm going to talk about. SunPower is a publicly traded company. We're approximately $1.5 billion in revenue. And we market, design, install the world's highest efficiency solar systems for residential customers and commercial customers. Interesting data, we have 360,000 residential systems installed. And in our commercial and industrial, you can imagine the logos that do business with us are who you would expect and who Sanda works with. And 40% of the time, those systems have storage attached. And if we just reflect on the last 10 years, solar has gone from sort of, I want to make a statement, I want to participate in climate change. Costs have come down 90% in 10 years, and now it's an economic decision. It is the lowest cost source of energy, and therefore it is dominating new energy generation investments. And by 2050, 70% of our energy will come from solar or wind. So there'll be a radical transformation, and storage will follow the path of solar. And so if you think about the building blocks that we have, 25 million homes today have solar, 10 times that number will have that by 2050. So solar will be like cell phones almost. And the cost, you'll be making an economic decision. Storage will be similar. And so if you think of what you can integrate when you have a solar system and storage, there are some obvious things that'll happen in the near term that are going to be super cool. You know how Tesla has insane mode. Soon you'll have solar mode for your car because you'll integrate EV charging with your storage system in your solar system. And then, of course, you'll integrate home automation with your solar system and your storage system in your car. And you can do super cool things then with trade-offs and lowering your bill and what do I power from solar. And then, of course, you're going to integrate all of that with the grid. And then this idea that happened in Texas where you have central points of failure will become obsolete. Energy will become, the grid will become like the internet. You don't talk about the internet's down. You may talk about your Wi-Fi's down, but you don't talk about the internet's down. It is incredibly reliable. That's what the decentralized storage and solar system will be of the future. You'll have microgrids, you'll have self-healing, you'll have the ability to wheel energy from one area to another. And I think there's going to be, I'll end with this, Mike, there's going to be some really incredible things done for equity so that all of our population in all of the world can participate. And it's happening already in America with the lower cost leases and states that are incentivizing community solar. So while we deliver this vision, we do need to address equity and make sure that it's good for everybody. So I'll end with President Biden says when he thinks climate change or renewables, he thinks millions of jobs. We are Silicon Valley Leadership Group. the amount of innovation that we can bring to bear to deliver this vision is incredible. And this is the sort of thing we do. So I think, the message here is change is our friend, and we're going to embrace it. And we Silicon Valley will be leaders, as we have been, delivering this vision.
Wow, Tom, that was great. Thank you so much. That's very inspiring. Let's segue over, if we can, to our third panelist. Bracken, your turn here to get into the conversation. Again, as we have with the other panelists, if you can briefly share with the audience some information about your company, what Logitech is, what it does, and then my question for you is, what are you particularly proud of in terms of your company's leadership on climate, and what more might be in store?
Well, first, it's really an honor to be on this panel. And I love the makeup of this panel because Sanda's probably representing trying to corral businesses to the right place to make sure that we stop global warming. And Tom's business is centered on one of the key building blocks of avoiding this, which is moving to renewable power. And we're the rest of them. Logitech represents the rest of the world, the rest of the companies out there. We're in the last 9 years, we've gone from a $1 billion valuation to $20 billion. We've done it by making more and more things. And so now we're at the point where we put out 1 million tons of carbon a year, and we're representative of all those other companies out there that are putting carbon out in the atmosphere. So we started 11 years ago trying to transform ourselves from being somebody who's inflicting harm on the earth to somebody who's actually doing good for the earth. And step by step by step, we didn't talk about it publicly. We're a do and then say kind of company until the last 2 years. But we've gone to almost 90% of our power is renewable now throughout the world. We've committed, as Sanda suggested, to the 1.5 degree goal, and we'll beat that by far. We reduced 64,000 tons of carbon last year by redesigning our products, and we'll keep doing that. We've gone to completely recyclable plastics. Our packaging, we have over 50% of our products now have recycled plastic, and we're going up from there, which is lower carbon output to recreate. And maybe, if you said, what are the two things I'm most proud of? One is what we've done. One just signals where we're going. The one we've done is we announced that we're going to carbon label every single product we have in every product line. So we're already carbon neutral on our gaming business. We're going to go there on our whole business over time, but we're going to put the amount of carbon, just like calories, on every package we have. We just started doing it. We started in our gaming business, and we think that is one of the ways that consumers can get engaged in rewarding and punishing those of us who don't make big moves on carbon reduction. And so I strongly encourage anyone listening today to jump on board with this. We've got an open system. We'll share it with anybody. We're working with other companies to help them. It needs to be accurate, it needs to be consistent. But if you're up for it, we're up for it. The second part that I'm really proud of is we've changed the definition of the purpose of the company. We used to enable people to fulfill their passions. And now we're enable all people to fulfill their passions and do it in a way that's good for the planet. And I think, building that into the purpose of the company is fundamental to signal really where we're going as a company, which is a lot farther than I just described.
Wow, again, inspiring. I love that the sharing of that information, the open source, the collaboration. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we need to get solutions to scale as we tackle this, frankly, huge existential problem. So building on what you both have said, Tom and Bracken, Silicon Valley continues to serve as a laboratory and an innovator, a space for innovation. We've seen a lot of clean energy and climate technology developed and scaled right from here. We have world-class institutions of higher learning. We have large philanthropic institutions, leading NGOs. All of it's located here. So my question is this, and of course, Sanda, please feel free to jump in as well. What else can the Valley do to help combat the climate crisis?
So I'll jump in first, and next question, I won't go first. IEA just put out a report, Net Zero by 2050, and in it, they cite that half of the innovations that will be implemented to get to net zero by 2050 are either in the prototype or demonstration phase. So if you think about that, this will be a massive industry and only half of it exists. And what does Silicon Valley do? Well, we create industries. We're the innovation capital of the world. And so Silicon Valley can do what it does. There are a lot of great venture capitalists and who are entrepreneurs who are coming together with some really phenomenal investments in ideas. A lot of this is going to be software, and software is done pretty well in Silicon Valley. So there will be, the ecosystem will work. And then, I just read Bill Gates' book, which does a nice job of telling you where CO2 comes from. And our region could be a leader in addressing each of the areas: buildings, transportation, and the like, and of course, electrification. And so what our cities can do, and we've got great mayors like Mayor Sam Liccardo in San Jose, what they can do is they can lead with procurement, and they can electrify transportation, city planning, like you see with San Jose, building housing near transit, completing BART to San Jose, so it goes all the way around the bay. This may sound familiar to people that know SVLG because they're leading a lot of these initiatives. So I think SVLG can be, Silicon Valley, driven by SVLG, can be a demonstration of how to address all the facets of what need to happen. Those are my thoughts.
Great, thanks, Tom. Anyone else want to jump in on this one?
I'll jump in from an additional angle. Fully agree, and I just want to really commend both Bracken and Tom for the fantastic work that their companies are doing. But beyond the valley, so what are the opportunities there? Because the thing is, the climate crisis is global. I appreciate the fantastic efforts that the valley is doing. The extra step would be, how do you interrogate your supply chain? How do you interrogate where you have a footprint? And how do you move that footprint and that chain to be in line with the fantastic aspiration, ambition, and transformations that are happening? I think that is really important. I think another thing I'd say to the Valley, and tying it to the incredible amounts of finance and capital that emanate from the fantastic businesses there, is how do we then apply this finance and capital to make the very large financial shifts we make to globally tackle the climate crisis. So for me, it's about taking the great opportunity that exists in the Valley and seeing how we apply it globally. Because, similar to what we often really say around COVID, for example, that, no one's safe until everybody's safe, the climate crisis is gonna affect us globally, either way or the other, depending on where you are. So mine is a call to lift that fantastic ambition in the Valley and push it out globally.
Good, thank you, Sanda.
I'm happy to add maybe one last tip in. I think Sanda and Tom said so much. I think, when I think about the Silicon Valley, I think increasingly Silicon Valley is not a place, it's an idea that's located all over the world. And I think, maybe what really needs to happen now is for everybody who thinks that innovation is getting easier and easier, is to just think big, act very boldly, and move very quickly. And, I think the word bold is always an interesting word. Courage and bold always are interesting words, because they imply significant risk. I think there's no risk now for companies to act boldly and to go out and move strongly. In fact, when I started Logitech, I had a chart that I used to show that said, design companies outperform regular companies about 3-to-1 in total shareholder returns. And I used to show that because I wanted to be a design company, still do. And I wanted to say, it's okay that we're investing a lot in design. I think it's the same thing, it's true times 5 when it comes to environmental sustainability and DE&I. The companies that get in the lead and jump on board early are going to be rewarded so much and so big time from a total shareholder return standpoint that not only is it the right thing to do, but the returns are going to be so disproportionately large that they're going to be rewarded with more resources, more talent, and more performance. So I don't think you actually have to be that bold, but you should probably have to think that way. Get yourself over the hump.
Great, thank you all. Good stuff here. I want to jump on this question because we're just really here in the US starting to come out of the pandemic. How has the pandemic changed your view or influenced your thinking in terms of what the business community and society can do to respond to monumental challenges like COVID-19, like the climate crisis? Hopefully you all saw Gina McCarthy earlier. The president's put forward big goals. She's very clear that they want to work in partnership with the private sector. What do you think? Are there some lessons learned there from what we are dealing with and what we're coming out of with the pandemic and the climate crisis?
I'm happy to jump in first, since Tom, you did last time, and Sanda did the first time. I am so excited about what the pandemic has showed we're capable of doing. And if you just focus on one mega event, the murder of Chauvin, the murder of George Floyd, it's mobilized a change in DE&I that's probably was so long overdue, and the pace is so fast now, and it's real. I believe it's really real and deep, that I think it's a great illustration of what companies are capable of doing if a fire is lit underneath them. And we need the same metaphorical fire lit under the environment. And when we do, I think this thing is going to absolutely take off. I think we're close to that. The second thing, I guess, that I'll state the obvious is, I see animals in my backyard now that I didn't know were even in the area. And I think, just stopping the carbon fuel emissions for a while, slowing them down dramatically, has shown what it does for the earth and how fast we can change things. So I think those two things are the clear, big messages for me from the pandemic.
The pandemic was I certainly, would have never projected that kind of massive disruption. And there is an analog if you think of climate change. And so there is it's a bigger disruption, but we can kind of see it coming. So it's kind of a wake-up call analogously. And Bracken, thank you for your comments on DE&I. I also think that hopefully we've made a permanent change there, and we'll see positive results from that. So I think it's an analog that can teach us how much we can change.
Great, thank you. Sanda?
I would add that one other lesson, and in building on what the gentlemen have said, is really that partnerships are critical. And sometimes we overthink how to partner. I think it took us a pandemic to figure out that when the problem is real and present, you get together. We saw competitors, put down that competitive edge and work together. We saw private sector and government come together in ways that perhaps we've never seen before in terms of agility and speed. And, for me, the biggest lesson I take out is that, we do need to collaborate to solve some of these singular global problems. No one entity can do it alone. But I think it's very clear that the private sector brings innovation, brings speed, brings ideas, brings access to market, to consumers that we must continue to build on and use. I think it's also definitely shown that you can both be profitable, but also serve a societal transformation in a way that makes sense. The two are not at odds. And I think it's demonstrated unique opportunities for businesses to engage in what I call societal transformation in ways that I think are unprecedented through partnerships.
Great, I think we've got less than a minute left. So I think it's a great point to end on, that point of collaboration, partnership. I love some of the themes that we teased out here today. So great to hear from such thoughtful, passionate leaders like Tom, Werner, Bracken, Darrell, and Sanda, Ojiambo. We really thank you for your time today and for your inspiring words. And we look forward to partnering with all of you as we help do our part into the race to net zero. Thank you all.